Welcome back, folks. Today we're going to learn the fundamentals of Adobe Flash. We just got off our Illustrator unit, and we are going to be using Illustrator to create this sketch into a graphic, and then we are going to import it into Flash and animate it. So you should have received this file from me somehow, and we're going to go ahead and open this up in Adobe Illustrator. So I'm going to close this out, and you should have Adobe Illustrator open. Let's go to File, let's go to New, and I am going to make my document a width of 550 pixels by a height of 400 pixels. The reason I'm making it this size is because that is the size as the default artboard in Adobe Flash. So just make sure we're set up like this, and we want to be in landscape orientation. And I'm going to go ahead and click OK. Here's our artboard. And what I'm going to do is go File, Place, and I'm going to find my butterfly sketch and go ahead and click on Place here. And there it is. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to lock the sketch layer, and this tutorial is assuming that you already know how to use Adobe Illustrator as a beginner, on a beginner to intermediate level. So let's go ahead and click a new layer here, and this one's going to be body, and we're just going to do the body part here with the two antennas right on this layer. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually pick what color I want it to be, and I'm going to use a about a medium gray with a black stroke, and I'm going to use my ellipse tool, and I'm going to click and drag out my ellipse here. I'm just going to go about there, and then I'm going to move it to about right here. And you can see mine's not completely perfect here, but whose sketch is completely perfect? And that's the main reason we're bringing it into Illustrator, is to make it a nice computer graphic using a sketch. So I'm going to zoom in here, and then I'm just going to use my pen tool with no fill. So click once on the fill, click none, and then I'm going to make an antenna here, and I'm going to go off of the sketch here. I'm just going to go over a little bit and then bring it right down to the body here. Now once we have the antenna here, I'm going to click on my selection tool and just make sure this is selected. Sometimes I click off in no man's land here just to deselect and then go over and make sure it's selected one more time. And then I'm going to go up to Object and go to Transform and then Reflect. And you can see my preview's already checked here, so it's going to show us what the reflect is going to do, and it's going to be on the vertical 90-degree angle. And I'm just going to click on Copy here, and then I'm going to click and hold in Shift and then just drag it straight over so it's right on the other side here. And there's our two antennas. And now we're going to go ahead and move on to the wing, and I'm going to lock the body layer, and then let's go ahead and do a create new layer, and then this will be left wing. And we're going to go ahead and start creating that. We're going to use a pen tool, and I want a blue fill, and we'll keep that black stroke the way it is. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start right inside the body here, and you're going to want to have overlap. The reason being is we're going to at the end drag this left wing layer under the body, and then it will the body will cover up that overlap. So I'm going to start here and then bring it up and around. And you just gotta use your imagination. I'm gonna bring it to about right here. And then I'm gonna click here and then close that shape off. Whoops. I'm gonna close that shape off. Pretty good to me. Now we're going to start this bottom shape here. So what I'm going to do is go down a little bit farther here, and this shape is going to be going over top of this top shape that we already created. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start down here. I'm going to click and just keep clicking and dragging. Drag out those handles to get the correct path curve. I'm going to undo that one. I feel like I can do a better job with that curve. And then to finish this off, I'm just going to kind of follow this line up through, and I'm just going to go about right here. I'm going to click and drag. I'm going to click back on that anchor point and then close this shape off. And then let me zoom out just a little bit here, and let's go ahead and I'm going to lock that layer, and then I'm going to drag this layer underneath the body layer, and you can see now it clips that edge off of the left wing layer, so that overlap is basically masked off by the profile of the body. Now what I can do is take this left wing layer and click on this little button right on the top corner of the layers panel, and we're going to duplicate the left wing layer, and we're actually going to make this now right wing. And then let's go ahead, and if you actually click this little button here, it selects everything on that layer, and then once everything's selected, we can go up to Object, Transform, Reflect, and then it should be defaulted to the last settings, which is vertical 90 degrees. The preview button, whether you had it checked or not checked, and we're just going to click OK on this one, not copy, because it already was copied. And so then I can just click and hold in Shift and drag it over to the other side here to line it up. And that looks pretty good. You can see here, if you're actually doing this yourself on your own and you are making a sketch in order to convert it into a vector graphic, you only really have to do the body part and then one wing in the sketch to save you some time. But just for the tutorial's sake, I did the other side of the sketch here. So this is our graphic here that we're going to be bringing into Adobe Flash. So make sure this layer here is locked. And what we want to do, I'm going to hide the sketch layer. Actually, we can go ahead and just delete the sketch layer. I'm going to drag it down to the trash can here, and now basically this is what we're going to be working with. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to take, I'm actually going to File, Save As, and we want to save this as butterfly vector, and I already have one here, so I'm going to name mine actually vector 2, and I'm going to go ahead and click save, and this is in my butterfly folder that I made in my documents, but you should probably have a Flash introduction folder that you're saving into. So go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and click save here and make sure it is in Adobe Illustrator file, and then when this box comes up, just click OK. And now we're done in Adobe Illustrator now, so I'm going to go ahead and close out Adobe Illustrator, and then we want to bring up Adobe Flash. So go ahead and click on Flash. If you don't have it on your desktop, just go ahead and click on Start, and then go up to All Programs and find the Adobe system. Click on ActionScript 3.0, and this is going to open up our stage area. Our stage area is this white section inside this gray section here. And you can drag things off of your stage area in order to help your animation out, but we won't go into that just yet. And over here you'll see a properties panel, and just like Adobe Illustrator and Adobe Photoshop, if you have a panel over here that I'm working with that you don't see, it will be listed under Window. So go ahead down there. If you don't have properties, click on properties here, and then you can always change that white background stage color by going here and just clicking on the stage area and changing it, but I'm going to leave it white. Whoops. And it will match basically any color that you hover over here. I'm just going to make sure mine's white, and then you can see here we're at size 550 by 400. That's what we made our actual Illustrator file, and you can see this FPS, which stands for frames per second, and we're sitting at 24 frames per second right now. And so that basically means down in the timeline here, once it goes to 24 frames, that's going to be our 1 second spot right here. But right now you can see the timeline only has frames here, because that's the way we have to make the animation, is we have to set up our frames. Basically an animation uses frames in sequence to create a video, and that's what we'll be doing today. So what I want to do is go up to File, go to Import, and go Import to Stage. And what I want to do is select that butterfly Illustrator file that we just created. And the nice thing about all the Adobe programs is you can make an Illustrator file and then bring it right into Flash, and it will understand the layers and some of the specifics of that document very nicely. So go ahead and click on Open here, and then another box will come up. In this, it is looking at all the different layers on that Illustrator file. So if you actually have an Illustrator file that has a whole lot of layers, they're all going to be listed down this side here. In this gray part is the layer itself, and then here are the sub layers that basically just section out and organize all the different objects on that layer. And then we're just only going to have this place object at original position checked, and convert layers to flash layers. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK here, and you can see it now brings in the graphic that we created right in the middle of the stage. And I'm going to go ahead and click off here, No Man's Land. And I'll just explain a little bit over here. You can see there are less tools than Adobe Illustrator. You can do all your artwork within Flash here, but I like to do most of my artwork in Illustrator because there are many more tools and you can get a lot more detailed with your graphics. But you always, if you know that graphic is going to be turned into an animation later on, then what you want to do is make sure you're creating it layered out in the way you're going to animate this thing, and we'll be going into that more here as the days go by. So the first thing that we need to do is I'm going to explain a little bit about keyframes. Basically, think of a frame as a picture. And if you want to think back about if you have ever done a flip book, each page is a frame. So each one of these little blocks is a frame. So think of these as your pages of your flip book. So the different picture played in sequence will then actually make your video. So the first thing I want to do is extend my body layer out to 60 frames here. And the body's not going to be getting animated at all. So we can go ahead and just fill all these frames here with this graphic. And the way we do that is just click on 60 and then right click and go insert frame. And you can see here that it brings this keyframe out here that has a little rectangle, vertical rectangle on there, and that represents one frame turned on for 60 frames. Now you can see how the time indicator here is down on 60 frames. The reason the wings went away is because the right wing and the left wing layers are not extended out to 60 frames. And those are what's going to be animated, so we're not actually going to extend them out until later in the tutorial. So let's go ahead and drag our time indicator. I'm just clicking and dragging it down. You can see here on frame 1 it shows everything, because you can see here something is filled in each of those frames. So what I'm going to do is click on the right wing layer here, and whenever you click once on that keyframe, it'll select everything on that layer. So I'm going to right click and go to Convert to Symbol here. And I'm going to change this to a graphic, and we're just going to name this right wing. And I'll go ahead and click OK here, and you can see it saves it into our library. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing for the left wing. I'm going to right click and I'm going to just left click on the frame and then go up here and right click on the actual objects and go to Convert to Symbol, and then this one will be left wing. Now that we have our two symbols created, what I'm going to do is let's start with the right wing here, because the layer's on top. So right now you can see in this keyframe the wing is basically at its stationary position. First thing we want to do in this keyframe is see this little dot here? That's what you call your pivot point. So if you transform this layer at all, it will do it around this pivot point. And don't do this. I'm just going to show you, for example, if I go to resize this thing here, see how it's resizing it over the middle? That's because the pivot point is right directly in the middle. So I'm going to do a Control Z. If I move this pivot point to the edge of that layer and then go to transform, you can see then it transforms it from the edge. So I'm going to go ahead and back up to where you're at, and we want to make sure in this first frame we move the pivot point back to right about the middle here, right in that section. So now what I'm going to do is make sure that frame is selected, excuse me, and go up to copy frame and go down to 10 here and do a paste frame. Now you can see here from frame 1 to frame 10 we have our body layer showing up and our right wing layer showing up because they are on whenever our time indicator goes over 10, or goes through 10 rather. So now let's pick on this 10th frame on the right wing layer, and actually I'm going to go ahead and lock our body layer, and I'm going to click up here, and we want to be using our free transform tool, and I'm going to click this and drag this corner up to about here. Actually, I'm going to bring it in a little bit more, about right there, and then I'm going to click off here, and then you can see now if I click my time indicator and go back to frame 9, it's still on what frame 1 looks like, and now once you go over to frame 10 it will show the new transformation of that layer. Now it's real blocky, it's just real, there's no good transition from 9 to 10. It's the one image to the next image. Now what we want to do is from 1 to 10 create a transformation process of gradually transforming to this position or this transformation. So what I want to do is I'm just going to drag my time indicator in the middle here and then click in the middle. Then I can right click and then go up to create classic tween. And whenever you put that tween in there, you can see what it does. It takes from 1, and I'm going to actually turn this off so you can just focus on the right side. From 1 to 10, it divides that transformation into the remaining 8 frames that are left, and it will make a nice transition from this 1 to 10. Now I'm going to go ahead and go back to 1, and I'm going to turn it back on, or turn the visibility back onto the left wing, and I'm going to select the first layer here, and let's go ahead and lock our right wing layer. Now with this frame 1 we have to do the same thing we did with the frame 1 of the right wing layer, and that's to relocate the pivot point. So I'm going to click and drag it to the right here, about right here, and then once we have moved the pivot point we can copy. So let's go ahead and copy frame and then paste frame here. Now once we're on frame 10 we can go ahead and transform it. And we just want to try and match the best we can that right wing here, which I think that's pretty good. And then we can go ahead and click in the middle of the frames here, right click and do a classic tween. So now you can see both of them are now animated. So now that we have both of the wings animated from 1 to 10, let's unlock the right wing layer. And now basically every 10 frames we're going to need a keyframe tweened between the last one and it. So what we want to do right now, we have the wide wing here to the narrow wing here. So in frame 20 we would have a wide wing again. So what we can do is just click and drag down on both number 1 frames. Let me do that one more time. If they're not selected here, you can click one and then hold in shift and select the other one, and it'll select both of those 2 frame 1s. Or the short way of doing that is just click and drag straight down, and then it selects both of them. Whichever way is more comfortable for you, use it. But if the click and drag isn't working out for you, don't use it. Use the shift method. Go ahead and right click once you have those selected and go to copy frames, and then click and drag down with 20, or click and hold in shift to pick both 20 keyframes here in both of these layers. Then right click and paste frames here, and you can see it brought it back to the wide position. So now you can see here the next thing we need to do is tween in between these 2 keyframes. So right click here, go to classic tween, and then do the same for this layer. And you can see now we have a nice transition from the wide wings to the narrow wings, and now back to the wide wings. Now for 30, it's going to be the narrow wings again. So I'm going to click and drag down here a little bit, and then right click, copy those frames, go down to here, paste the frames, and then I'm just going to repeat that process. I want to now pick these wide wings, do a copy frame, and then go down to 40, paste those frames. And since the ones that we copied already had a tween assigned to them, once we paste them, it'll automatically tween it to that last keyframe. So then I'm going to pick these 2 again. Let's do a copy frame, and then paste frame, and then just keep checking your work as you're going along the timeline here. It looks good so far. So go back to 40, copy here, and then we'll go down to 60 and then paste frames. So now if you go ahead and click on your play button, it'll play your animation through. And basically this is your first animation on animating these butterfly wings to flap. So let's go ahead and let's do a file, save as, and I'm going to save this as butterfly flash, or butterfly animation. And make sure you make a folder for this that has the Illustrator file and the Flash file in it. So go ahead and click Save. And then what you want to do is press Control and Enter. and what it does, it exports it into an SWF file or a SWIFT file. Some people call it, but the .swf stands for shockwave file, and that is custom to Adobe Flash players and actually the Adobe Flash software here, the software animation program. So now, actually, if you go to that folder that you saved this file in, and I'm going to actually drag my folder in here now, you can see here what you control. See, this was my Flash. We were in this document, and then we pressed Control Enter, and it exported then this, you can see here, a shockwave file. And whenever you double click that one, it'll open in the Adobe Flash player on your computer. If you don't have Adobe Flash player installed, it won't play it, so you'll have to go to the Adobe website to upload it. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. So this is basically what I'll be grading. And actually, I'll be grading all three: the Adobe Illustrator, the Flash file, and the actual exported animation file here. You can actually export in different formats like QuickTime and MPEG, but we'll get into those in later tutorials. So I'm going to go ahead and close here, and I hope you enjoyed the tutorial, and thank you for watching.